come up with that he said? Just one of the ideas that had meaning for you. Yeah. Thanks, Karen.
If you are in a shock and you can't recover, so health is something when you have a shock in life, death or something, whatever it is, and you can go on with your life afterwards without any interference. That's health.
Yeah, and that was his biological definition of health. Yeah. So that ability to recover after a shock.
And also like during like a difficult situation, in that moment where there's something happening that's stressful, like is there enough space to sort of act in a way that can help you, I think was another one. Yeah. Absolutely.
I like that, find a space.
I like the reference to Milton Erickson and the idea that functioning, whatever condition you are in, is a healthy condition.
We brought up the notion of what is healthy. I mean, like a Nazi who is torturing a Jew. Is he healthy when he's recovering from what he has done? Where is the limit of health if you interfere in someone else's health? So, is it really healthy?
I think they're the questions, you know, they're the paradoxes of life, aren't they? Yeah? And I think what he's, you know, my interpretation here is he's very much looking at individual health. Yeah? What is it that we define for ourselves as health?
All right. I really like that the one you were talking about, Karen, the biological definition. That reminds me of role-playing games and this whole notion of that you have health points or, you know, life points, and you are alive to the degree that you have those points available to you, and any damage that one sustains reduces those life points. And it just made me think of that. That health is this pool of resilience that one has. And also, his part of that discussion just made me ponder when he was talking about, you know, those sort of war-based examples, and one's sort of mental resilience to come back from those sort of shocks. And I thought, well, you know, like you get a Navy SEAL or something like that, and these people can be trained into being able to withstand those kind of shocking situations, but nevertheless, that's a training that isn't necessarily indicative of one's overall health, as evident by, you know, post-traumatic stress sort of symptoms coming in later in life. So,
anything else? Any other definitions?
We had a few more.
Yeah, there were a couple more. Yeah.
I sort of was starting to lose concentration a bit later on, but we were talking about, he was talking about like learning automatic responses versus, I can't remember how it was exactly, but I just thought maybe it's like also finding ways to support yourself through, you know, discovering what works and what doesn't. So that's health too, is like in life sort of finding other ways, other resources, other ways that you can change your automatic response to, you know, how you would normally respond. Yeah, and I don't know whether that's what he was saying it sort of later on.
That's a pretty nice.
Yeah.
We'll explore it in a minute. Okay. Yeah. But, yeah.
I particularly like the aspect of the bouncing back from trauma and stress, but also he referred to following through with your dreams as well, and that creativity element, bringing that through, and how we let things get in the way of doing that.
And just to add to that,
we kind of saw it. I think we saw it the same way. It's like two sides of the same coin. So you had the resilience, the more physical side, but then we called it sort of authenticity. So being able to explore and follow those dreams, exactly, to sort of maybe explore a different side of yourself beyond society's expectations and demands.
Any others? Go for it.
So, and then the second part of so being able to be connected to one's dreams and desires and maybe hopes for their life, and then second to that, to have the capacity to follow that through and to enact that.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's cerebration. Okay. So one more that I really loved is, and he said this before he really started, but, is a healthy person someone who can think for themselves? Is a healthy person someone who can think for themselves? And I thought that was really interesting, that whole thing, he's at uni and he comes home at the end of the day, and is there anything original or anything that he's come to, or is it just this?
Accumulated conglomerate.
And even if you're accumulating from different areas, you can still make a synthesis, if you like, that's yours. That's yours. I don't think he's saying there to me that you all have to come up with these highly original ways of doing it, but just how do you bring things differently together? How do you find your way of making sense of the world?
But in school,
well done.
But I found, like in the Australian schooling system, creativity or individuality is not really fostered. Like when I was studying OT, if I wanted to put something in my essay, what was on my mind, it wasn't possible, which was possible in Austria. But here, everything had to be referenced. I had to find someone and a reference who has said that before. So that doesn't foster. Yeah.
I just saw a video this morning, actually, on I think academic sort of rates between Finland and the US, and how they were both the same about 10 years ago. But Finland's completely, like, you only have 3 hours of schooling, and the rest of the time they're climbing trees. They've got no homework. They're just creative, and they just just be creative, playful, fun, and just be. And these children, like the academic, because of that ability to let them explore, has completely skyrocketed. And they're just, it's, everyone's baffled like how that can be. But that space to be creative and be yourself, and
very similar with the Steiner teaching.
Yes, except, I always remember reading is it Ellen J. Langer, her books? Anyway, she does this beautiful study. And again, what do we need? Because she did this beautiful study on the children who, in a normal classroom, if we say, and this would have been, I think it was a few years ago, but most children tend to be more still, or they're sitting at a table, or they're sitting in a group, or they're doing something, but they're usually in a habitual sort of pose. And then she compared them with the Montessori school, who were allowed to move around at will and do whatever they like. And what she found, which when we think about it isn't surprising, that they both got habituated to that way of doing things. And the best thing you could do was for the Montessori children to learn how to be still and to pay attention, and for the children in other schools to be given times when they could run around So I think that's the real crux. You know, it's not that there's ever one right way. It's that ability to continue to adapt and to have different ways of being able to do the same thing. Yeah, that can evoke our curiosity. Yeah, Karen.
One thing with Feldenkrais, in the book it says he has these ATMs, which you should do, and then you can explore yourself. So is that something what we are, what you're teaching us, that we actually just do our own ATMs?
That's again for you as individuals to find. You know, I can say my practice. I can give you an example of my practice, which was that I always used ATM lessons when I first started teaching, because I felt there's a structure there, it works. Maybe I don't have a deep kinesthetic experience of this lesson, but I can trust the lesson, you know, sort of create a learning environment. As time goes on, I still go to an ATM class every week that someone else runs, so I don't have to think about teaching, so that I can just lie down and explore my learning process. Generally, though, when I'm at home and lying down, I'll just be following my process. Okay. Just self-directing my learning. But it's interesting because when I just self-direct it, it's a really great process, but sometimes I don't know where it leads, really. Whereas I can see there's something about the structure of ATM lessons that brings more of a sense of organisation or a sense of completeness. But absolutely, you know, there are some in our training for our ATM practicum at the end of year 2, we all had to design our own ATM lessons and teach them. I would not recommend that personally.
We don't have to do that, do we?
Yeah, I do not recommend it because I actually know that the group of us who were physios, we basically just did differentiation of the foot. But I know it didn't include the whole person. Do you know what I mean? I know that the way we did it, and I think that took away from our ability to sense how important creating a learning environment was and how important it was to develop people's relationship to learning, because we were so caught up in did we get the right moves and put it together? And, you know, then other people love creating new ATMs. You know, it's so again, it's really individual, Karen. Really
that's cool.
Individual. And none of us are going to get the same outcome. Absolutely. It's not about the movement, it's about the awareness and giving the system time to develop its own direction. And that's what he's talking about health abilities. Do you have that? If you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. Yeah? If you know what you're doing, you can do what you want. That's his bottom line. And I think that's where the really interesting questions come up. What do we get out of ATMs? Because what we all know that repetition is absolutely essential to learning. Absolutely essential. So is novelty. Absolutely essential to learning. You know, so the question we ask ourselves is, what are we repeating in every ATM we do, which is really self-direction? That's what we're honing our skill in every single ATM we do. And the movements then give us that novelty, if you like, or that way to be in another situation to explore this. And the movements themselves are designed so beautifully that they will organise you in particular ways that give you more possibilities to move and act in the world. So, okay, so I just wanted to go through one thing, and this is my little pet out of this talk. So, he's again talking so much about how much is taken up in the intentional cortex with supporting us in the gravitational field.
Thanks. What is the intentional
Thank
cortex?
you.
Because I read that and I went, I don't have any fucking idea what that is, and I really, what is that?
Look, I can't tell you, there'd be people in this room who could give you more of that. And the intentional cortex is more the top of the brain.
Okay.
The two, if you like, the two big hemispheres where we're consciously putting our intention into action. Yes.
The motor cortex is part of that. But like, I don't know what my intention half the time is, because I'll find I have an intention to go here and I end up over there.
So you haven't got a very clear,
I haven't got a clear
way of putting your intention into
There's
action.
something there going on that putting my intention in action. I tried to play pool last night and the guy told me, put your foot in the direction that you want to hit the ball. And I went, that's really useful.
Except it's not just your foot.
No, it wasn't.
That has to be there. Every single part of you has to be.
Yeah, and I couldn't do that, so I just turned my pelvis.
Direction.
It
but
was
that's what
effective.
that's what a direction is. A direction is the ability that every single part of you is organised to move in the direction of your intention. That's what every ATM is about. That's why you're constantly scanning all of these different parts of yourself. So, is it going to make sense if I want to get up and go to the skeleton, if I do that, to go over there? No? Or if I take myself back over here to get up and go over there? Doesn't mean I won't get there, but where is there how much clarity? And that's what we're always looking for. We've got all these options. We're talking about it. But then it's not just about having options. It's about, at that moment, knowing which option is going to best match your intention in the world. No? So it's not about getting lost in this options. That's not what this work is about. So I just wanted to tell you a little story. So again, he's talking about this ability. So one of the things that he doesn't say explicitly, but one of the things he talks about, all this conscious, that we've paid conscious attention to doing something and then it becomes unconscious. One of the very big things that happens is our response to gravity. That's something we've been learning from being a baby. And we're learning how to bring ourselves up into the gravitational field. And we all get up there in our very, very own individual way, which you can evidence by watching a group of us walk around the room. And we all have our very individual ways of moving. So one of the things is he's saying that if you're putting a lot of work into that, it's closing off, it's using up a lot of your brain in a very habitual configuration. So what he's after is how can we get out of that habitual configuration and find more easily this whole ability to support ourselves in the gravitational field and to move in these directions through space. So we've done this a lot and I'm going to do it again. If you're sitting at the moment, this is your habitual configuration. How much is your skeleton supporting you at the moment? How easily could you move? What directions would you be able to move in at the moment? And hopefully you can all move, but how many directions are available? And with a lot of you, it's sort of side to side. There's not much up in a lot of you at the moment. But anyway, so this is your habitual configuration. You're going to return to this, and I'm sure for most of you, hopefully, it's changed since the beginning of the training. Without you necessarily being aware of it, but something has changed in this habitual configuration, and hopefully will keep changing in this habitual configuration. Just as you've been seeing how those pelvic clocks, you're getting more options in there, more ability to find these different ways. So a little story. One of my clients who I started seeing her, again, I've got some really long-term clients. So I started seeing her when probably she was in her 30s. No, she wasn't. She was 40. And at the birth of her third child, which would have been about 7 years before I started seeing her, just after the birth of her child, she suffered a major stroke. So she was left with a major hemiplegia with one side, so especially in her arm, very little function in her arm. But you know, she could walk, she could function, but she also lost a lot of her cognitive skills. So it was very difficult for her to remember new things she learned. Now, whether you want to call that short, I don't care what you call it, but you know, you do something and she would find it difficult to remember. So this woman who'd been, as she would say, felt very successful in the world. She was, you know, a high flyer in the corporate world, had these children, marriage, was persona completely changed. That's what I call resilience, the ability to recover from a shock like that, personally. And she's quite an inspiring individual. And she's got her particular ways of how she's found sustenance and the ability to continue. As time went on, her marriage broke apart. She's been through pretty horrendous difficulties with that. But you know, she just keeps on. She just keeps on. And then at the beginning of, I think it was last year, she was diagnosed with stage 3 ovarian cancer. So again, another huge hit to herself as an individual. And we get on very well together. And she came in and, you know, we'd been talking about it. And she was saying, oh, and now I've got to have the chemo and I just don't know if I can do it. You know, it's all just a bit much. And I could see it was so apparent that she'd completely gone back into her really old habitual configuration in the gravitational field. This was really tight. This was down. She wasn't taking much weight onto this leg. So she'd really, under shock, where do we return to? We will return to something that in the past, for whatever reason, has felt that we were safe or that we could do something. So it was really lovely to do this session because she couldn't move forward. From where she was, there was no way she could move forward. She had a little bit of coming to her more comfortable side, but every other direction was nearly not available. And it was really beautiful to do a session with her. She could come up at the end. Of course, she was still, but she had options. She could move forward with the pelvis. She could move backwards with the pelvis. She could turn to the right with her pelvis. And that ability to be able to, from that place, then when we talked about a chemo, she said, it's okay now. It's okay. I can go ahead because now I feel as if it's a choice I'm making rather than I don't have any choices and I'm just jammed into what I'm doing. And I think this is what we're trying to get across, this habitual organisation that we do in the gravitational field. And that it's come, as I said, from many of us from a very early age. It's what we will retreat to. And I think the beauty of the Feldenkrais method, that's what we're trying to come through. Can we begin to find different ways to move ourselves in the gravitational field? Can we find that we have more options to move in? So if I get the skeleton, so again, just feeling for yourselves, he doesn't need legs for this because you're all sitting. Just pretend he's got legs. So feeling for yourselves. So if we think about one of our big definitions of improved organisation is the ability to move in the cardinal directions without, and he said it again, without previous we don't have to organise ourselves. So if I'm down here, this is my habitual response, and I wanted to move forward, because my pelvis isn't really ready to move forward here, I would have to reorganise myself in the gravitational field to be able to move forward. Does that make sense? Yeah? I have to reorganise. So down here I can still go back a little bit, I can go, but I can't move in any of these directions without reorganising. So, and again, so the cardinal directions are up, down, left, right, forward, back. Yeah? They are directions that anyone understands. Anyone, if you said, can you go up, can you go down, can you go left, can you go right? Well, maybe not anyone, but the majority of people would understand what those directions mean. And they understand them because they understand them in themselves. You actually have to understand it in yourself to really know what it is. Okay, then we've got the planes of movement, which are flexion, extension. Yeah? So a plane of movement is flexion, extension. What's another plane of movement? Rotation is another, where you're rotating around the vertical axis. Yeah? So the planes of movement are around the axes of movement. So if this is one axis of movement, that's rotation. No? No? If this is another axis of movement, what's that? Yeah, side bending. No? And if this is the other axis, flexion, extension. No? So they're sort of the planes of movement. And they're the ones that most people don't know. They don't need to know them. But, you know, for most of you, just like I did when I started physio, it was like, I don't know, what's flexion, extension, what's lateral flexion? Yeah? But everyone understands cardinal directions. Yeah? They're what we're really interested in. Okay? So then we're really interested especially in the head's ability to do these cardinal directions. Okay? So if come up to standing, because I really want you just to get this clear on when how these two work a little bit in the service of each other. So if I said to you, and just go slowly, start to go down toward the floor. Start to go down toward the floor.
You have the intention to reach the floor?
No, you're just going down. This is just a direction down, whatever intention you want. Okay? So now, could that half stop and this half continue? And just look how many different ways there are to go down in a cardinal direction. Yeah? So some people do a lot of folding. Some people extend in their torso to go down. Some people take their head a long way forward. Some people keep their head central. So every plane of movement can be included in the direction of going down. So now do you want to watch this group and see, just look, these planes of movement are simply in the service of a direction in space. And can you see everyone has a little bit different way of doing it? So now, all of you, could you find a different way to go down? You've done, yeah? Find another way to go down and feel, are you going to use a different plane of action? Because you could go backwards and go down. I just said go down. Huh? So you can put rotation in there. You can put extending. You can put side bending. And the different, and can you feel they're all orienting? They're all going to take your head in a slightly different orientation to go down. Because this is where the taliceptors are. Huh? Huh?
It's also where the balance things are.
Taliceptors and the vestibular system. Yeah. So so can you feel that if I wanted to look down over there or look down, I'm going to make a different shape. Yeah? And this is why the more you can understand all these different shapes through you, yeah? All these different ways, pelvic clock, through to my shoulders, through to my head, is really important. What about if you're going to go to your right? How do you do it? And you're going to move. So this is the cardinal direction. So you're going to move a little bit to your right. How do you do it? And again, how many different ways? And is it influenced by where your head's orienting? So you're going to go to your right and look a little bit, yeah, behind or right and down. You can, once you start putting some combinations in there, feel how the rest of you has to be able to adapt. How about if you were going to turn? So you're going to, you can still go a little bit. Now, okay, what about moving forward in space? How many different ways could you do that? So you could move as all one piece, you could have, you know, contralateral, you could have one side moving forward. Yeah. Yeah. But is your intention being fulfilled of being able to move in these cardinal directions in your individual way? No? So there are a myriad ways that we can organise these cardinal directions. Some of them might be a little bit more efficient than others. No? What about backwards? How do you do that? What do you do to move backwards through space? Because remember, the cardinal directions are moving us through space. Okay, now just combine some of those with your head. So you're going to move through space, but your head wants to do a combination of those directions. So it might want to go to the right and down. It might want to go to the right and forward and down. It might want to go, you just pick. You've got all of those places that you want to orient to in space. And again, are there some of those orientations that you don't think of doing because you don't yet know how to organise them? Your head isn't yet completely connected to all of these shapes that would be possible to make. So that's what we're doing in this. We're opening up these cardinal directions. Now, just after doing all of those different directions, are you standing differently than when you first stood up? Yeah. Simply by exploring different orientations in space. You're standing differently. Your anti-gravity response has been organised in a different way. You're not in your habitual configuration as much. So I would, maybe you might want to play around with this, but when you've got something coming up that's stressing you a bit, maybe you just want to stand up and explore some different cardinal directions in space and then come back to thinking about your problem. Because that's what we do as Feldenkrais practitioners. Okay, let's take our morning break.